when our recording will start. My name is Alice. Once again, I am a librarian for San Mateo County Libraries. And I am just so excited to have Vincent and Ben from the Center for Independence of Individuals with Disabilities in San Mateo County here to bring you this program tonight on disability and etiquette. They're such a fantastic organization, and they offer so many services, and I know they're going to give an overview of everything they do along with their great wisdom and experience about what they're going to share tonight. So I'm just going to go ahead and hand this over to them. I'm going to pop their website in the chat. So if you're curious, you can take a look.
All right. And this is our disability etiquette presentation. It's presented by Benjamin McMullen, our systems change advocate, and me, Vincent Lopez. It was developed by Evan Melbourne, Benjamin McMullen, Kim Sacchio from Skyline College. She works at the Education Access Center, and me on there. I think somebody pop something up in the chat. Oh, Alex, okay. So let's go into an icebreaker. Just for things to think about. This is a safe space. You can say whatever you want on there. And then, feel free on there. But we have the first question is just things to think about. What are some bad words pertaining to disability? What is first person language? And what is your definition of the word ableism on there? You guys could wait to answer. We could revisit it, whichever way on there. So we'll give it a minute or so, and then we'll bounce into the next page. So just things to think about on there.
So Vincent and I, as Alice said, from CID, our mission is to provide support services, community awareness, and systems change advocacy to promote full and equal community integration and participation for people with disabilities in San Mateo County.
And Ben, what do you do for CID?
I am the systems change advocate. So I help organize the community to create change on a systematic level. Systems such as being housing, transportation, to make them more accessible for people with disabilities. I also work alongside the legislature at all levels of government advocating for such change.
A little introduction about me. I'm the Assistive Technologies Manager at Center for Independence. My job is any disability, any task, I have to find a way to make it happen with the use of assistive technology from low tech to high tech. And I kind of focus more on low tech. Ben.
Okay, so let's start out talking about the independent living model and how it changed the perception of disability. The independent living model really emerged in the 70s, and it really changed the way people with disabilities are viewed, how they interacted with the community and society as a whole. So what was the medical model? It said that the problem is the disability, professionals know what's best, and the individual needs to be fixed. So in the 70s, with the emergence of the independent living model, really challenged this thinking. And it said the problem is actually societal and environmental barriers. The independent living model is self-directed and a consumer-driven approach, meaning that the individual defines what services they receive and what needs to be done to make the environment more accessible for them. The goal of the independent living model is to be more independent in the universally accessible environment. Next slide.
Here are some of CID's programs and services that we offer at Center for Independence of San Mateo. We are one of the oldest independent living centers. We were established in 1979 on there. So we have peer counseling, housing accessibility modifications. If you're considered a low-income consumer in San Mateo County, that means you make less than $100,000 a year. You are eligible for housing accessibility modifications, anywhere from grab bars in the shower to wheelchair ramps to wheelchair lifts to make your home accessible so you can live in your home as long as possible. Assistive technology, again, any task, any disability. I try and find a way to make it happen as cost effective as possible. Independent living skills. We have generalists that work with individuals to help them create independent living skills to live more independently in general. Information and referral. There's no way we can be the experts at everything, so we will refer you to someone that might know more. So we have a great resources and information, and if I'm not the master of that whole program, I will refer you to someone who knows more than me. Transition services. When a student's transitioning from high school into adult life, we help assist them with the transition, with either going into higher education or going out in the work world. Independent living planning and support. We help support individuals create a plan and help them work on that plan to make them living independently. Systems change advocacy, which Ben explained on his side. We have a youth organization called YO that we work with that's run by the California Foundation of Independent Living Centers. Financial benefits counseling, or we call it WIPA, because we always have to make everything an acronym. Financial benefits counseling is if you're on Medi-Cal, you only have a limited amount in your working person, or you want to go to work, they will help you make sure that you can work to a point where you won't lose your medical benefits. You're only supposed to have so much money in the bank at one time. And if you make too much money, then they could take your Medi-Cal benefits away. So these people help work with you to go through and make sure you don't lose your Medi-Cal insurance. And we also have a matching system to help people with personal attendance services.
Can I also add, under transitional services, there is another prong to transitional services where we help transition people from institutions if they want to transition back to community living. We provide that service. So we work with the individual to get them established in the community and provide them with those services.
Does anybody have any questions about CID services? You give 1 minute.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a 21-year-old daughter that's about to age out of the education system. And we are looking at having her do some kind of work program. Is that something that you might be able to assist us with?
Yeah, we could definitely get her connected with the generalist and see what they could find. Usually we try and find what the consumer's goal is, kind of like, what do you want to do? And then try and find a way to make it happen.
Oh, I just thought that. So when I call, do I have to wait till after she ages out, or can we call sooner? Or?
No, you could call, well, not now because we're closed, but yeah, you can give us a call, or if you want, let me type in my email on here.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you so much.
At least
while Vincent's doing that, I will say that we're involved in planning the transition to Independence Fair. We have different panels from month to month. And I believe something we discussed coming up is to have a panel of internship opportunities that people can come learn about potential internships they would like to be involved in throughout the nonprofit community.
Any more questions? Sorry, I studied sign language, so that's why I'm moving so. Okay. Let's get down to the next one. And of course, there we go. Somebody put something in the chat. Noreen put in the chat, are your services restricted to San Mateo County? Some of our services are, and some of our services are not. But you could always feel free to reach out to us. And if you're in a different county, we could refer you to the Independence Living Center in that area also. And we all offer similar services too.
There are 29 independent living centers throughout the state of California, and every county is covered by an independent living center, and some independent living centers obviously cover multiple counties.
And does anybody know what the word ableism is? Oh, wait, I skipped a slide. I'm sorry. Ben.
So person first language is a way of referring to a person with a disability to acknowledge that the individual is identified as a person before the disability. Example is Joe, who uses a wheelchair instead of the wheelchair user Joe. Saying things such as person first language rather than the disabled person acknowledges that the person is more than just a diagnosis. By using person first language, it not only eliminates stereotyping, it also creates an environment that is filled with dignity and respect. Person first language also helps create positive images and impressions we form about persons with disabilities. And I will also note that some people prefer identity first language. I put together this presentation with Vincent and the others listed in before slides. And I've always been most comfortable with person first language. So that's why we highlight person first language. But what it really comes down to is you need to ask the person with a disability how they would like to be referred to and what format they prefer. Format being person first language or identity first language. Next slide.
All right. Does anybody know what ableism is? The word ableism. I feel like the teacher at Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like Bueller, sorry. Well, ableism is defined as discrimination in favor of able-bodied people. Does anybody know any examples of ableism in history that we have? Or how do we see ableism today? And you could either type in the chat if you want to turn on your microphone, whatnot. Okay, well, history-wise, ableism is a good example is the eugenics movement in the United States. Oh, somebody put something in the chat. Oh, lack of curb cuts. Yeah, I could see that on there. Sally put in there lack of curb cuts. yeah, that's, well, yeah. And the thing is they're not even thinking of the ladies with the wheelchair, with the strollers on there. So that's one good example of ableism on there. So back in history, the United States had a eugenics movement. People found themselves targets of the eugenics movement were those who were seen unfit for society, which happened to include poor, people with disabilities, and specific communities of color. Disproportionate number of those fell victims to the eugenic sterilization initiatives. And they were women identified as African American, Hispanic, or Native American. As a result, the United States eugenics movement is now generally associated with racist and nativist elements, as the movement was to some exact a retraction to demographic and population changes, as well as concerns over the economy and social well-being, rather than being scientific genetics. Also, unfortunately, when we had the Nazis, the first people they took out were the individuals with disabilities, and they used the eugenics movement as the excuse, and then they proceeded to go after everybody else. Ableism today, a good example for that is our U.S. penitentiary system. On 2015, 32% of the prisoners and 40% of jail inmates reported having at least one disability. Prisoners were 3 times more likely, and jail inmates were more than 4 times more likely than general population to report having at least one disability. Let me see, what's the other thing? 2 in 10 prisoners and 3 in 10 inmates report having a cognitive disability, the most common reported disability in each population. Female prisoners were more likely than male prisoners to report having a cognitive disability, but were equal likely to report having each of the other 5 disabilities. So unfortunately, our penitentiary system is kind of like our new institution system on there. So those are some examples of ableism we have today. Now let's get light. Or dark.
Okay, so we have some bad words and preferred words. And again, these really came out of that kind of independent living movement where we transitioned to society fitting the person. So some bad words are handicapped, normal, retarded, deaf, dumb, and believe it or not, more and more senior citizens are preferring to be called older adults than senior citizens. So we put senior citizens under the bad word list. Preferred words. So instead of handicapped, say individual with disabilities or individual with a disability. Instead of normal, say differently able, developmentally disabled rather than retarded, rather than a small d deaf, have a capital D deaf, instead of dumb and dysphagia. Instead of senior citizen, like I said, older adult. And Vincent, do you want to explain the difference between the small deaf and the capital D deaf?
Yeah, we're going to get into that when we get into the deaf slide on there. But on our visual descriptions of the pictures, it's a caricature of a person on a crutch who's missing a leg, and he has his hand out begging. So there's a big argument over where the word handicap came out. But when you have your hat on and you have your hat out and you're begging for money, a person with a disability can't do anything but be a beggar. So that's one of the terminologies that kind of fit. So it already kind of down on there. Now on the right picture, It's Franklin Delano Roosevelt, our president or past president, sitting in a wheelchair with a little girl next to him on there. So, like a bad example and a good example. So even though they have handicapped parking, we call it accessible parking now. Things like that, that word just has a bad tinge, especially that handicap word on there.
And I will say recently the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors passed a resolution pretty much switching to not using the word handicap, using disabled to address people with disabilities and things related to people with disabilities. So they virtually said handicap should no longer be used in county business. So that was a big victory for sure. All right, Vincent.
Oh, it's me? Okay. They have shades of disabilities. Every disability has a range or spectrum. Disabilities can be more involved or less involved, but all fall under the same disability umbrella. Few examples we have are blindness, where it can range from color blindness to low vision to, of course, the screen's covering my notes. From color blindness to partial blindness to complete blindness on there. With autism, they have Asperger's syndrome, which is at the milder end of the spectrum, and childhood disintegrative disorder, which is at the far end of the autism spectrum. So even though, and then for cerebral palsy, Ben, would you like to explain this one or?
Yeah, so basically there's different categories or types of cerebral palsy. You have spastic cerebral palsy, athetoid cerebral palsy, ataxic cerebral palsy, and then you have a mixed form of cerebral palsy where it can be all, a combination of the different categories of cerebral palsy. I personally have what's known as spastic cerebral palsy. So I'll often have involuntary movements such as tremors and the like. So that's categories of cerebral palsy.
So there's a lot of different shades with disabilities. So, that's one thing to kind of address and keep in mind when you're working with somebody with a disability. Okay, Ben.
Okay, fundamental rules to do. Wait to be asked. This is when you are interacting with a person with a disability. Wait to be asked before you help within reason. Adults with disabilities want to be treated as independent adults and are more than willing to ask for help when they need it. If the situation looks dangerous or you have a relationship with the person, just ask. Then think before you speak. If a person with a disability is part of the group, you want to speak directly to them as you would any other member of that group. So you wouldn't want to ask the rest of the group about the person with a disability. Rather, you would just want to ask the person with a disability what they need. Lastly, treat individuals with disabilities as a peer.
Got it.
The fundamental rules do not ask why or how the disability happened. Usually, like any other relationship with a person, any other friendship with a person, let the friendship develop. And as you get more comfortable in the friendship, people reveal more about themselves. So give the person with individuals with disabilities that same courtesy. You don't, if you ask how or why the disability happened, you may offend the person because it's their personal story. It is not how they should be identified. And you may get some good or fake stories that might be out there. The example here is bitten by a radioactive spider. But you might get some stories that you're not expecting just to throw you off base. Do not be an enabler. And what does it mean? Put in the chat what you think it means to be enabled.
Or the
If
word.
you feel comfortable, what the word enable means. And I'll give you a second to do that. And I will just tell you if nobody wants to share. So enable basically means, we got a response. Staying passive when others do things on the do not list. Could be, yeah. Help the person in ways that disempower their independence. Yes. So it's really not to give people that chance to do things themselves and to hop in and do things for them. But thank you for participating all, for sure. Next slide.
Yeah. Oh, and a side note on that one, even if it takes an individual with a disability twice as much time as it takes a person with that's able-bodied, they still should be able to do it. Because if you enable the person, they will not gain that skill. And our big thing is trying to be as independent as possible on there. So we want to make sure that individuals, should at least try to do it, because over time, when you enable people, then they're used to having people do stuff for them instead of trying to do it for themselves. Because, even if you could do something in 5 minutes and it takes somebody an hour, it's better that they do it because they can do it.
Fundamental rules do not speak for the person or don't make assumptions. People with disabilities are the best judges of what their own abilities are. Always, if you don't know, ask. Just kind of reiterating what we've already said a little bit.
And no assumptions.
Right.
Big one. Visual description: two African-American twins that are standing next, girls that are standing next to each other.
There are many disabilities which are hidden that aren't apparent to observers. And we're going to share some examples here. Autism is a hidden disability. Bipolar, depression, eating disorders, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, ADHD, dyslexia, TBI, traumatic brain injuries, diabetes, and fibromyalgia. Again, they're disabilities that aren't apparent when you approach somebody and that you can't see. Next slide.
All right, hard of hearing, capital D deaf and lowercase d deaf. Visual description is the hand sign for love. The deaf community took the word deaf on there, but let's go through this. So hard of hearing is an individual with a hearing loss who's not culturally tied into the deaf community and they use hearing aids. Lowercase d is the medical definition of hearing loss. The capital case D is different. They're either people, well, it could be a person with little or no functional hearing, or an individual who associates with deaf culture, who are culturally deaf tied by the language of the hand. In America, it's American Sign Language. Unfortunately, sign language is not universal. They even have regional signs within American Sign Language. So like an example is San Francisco. Let's do that. So in San Francisco, this is the sign. It's a S hand shape to an F hand shape. Everywhere else in the United States, it's on your head, almost like you're wearing a hat, the S hand shape to the F. I think people from other areas think San Francisco people love their city so much because it's the best city out there. And that San Francisco people are always thinking about the city or talking about the city. Or Bay Area people always wear their gear. We have to have our SF Giants hat or our Niners hat or whatnot, because everywhere I've gone, if I saw somebody wearing San Francisco gear, I could walk straight up to them and talk to them because I know they're San Francisco fans on there. Little thing on there too, deaf culture. It's the culture among the deaf individuals tied by the common language. So the word deaf, people take it as a bad term. Well, deaf people took that word and made it their power word on there. Yes, I am deaf, but I'm capital D deaf. I'm culturally deaf on there. So it's also tied by a language. It's been proved, American Sign Language has been proved to be a language. Deaf culture is a culture because it's tied by the language. So there's a lot of things that went through to prove that American Sign Language is a true language and it's a culture. A big thing about deaf culture is earning your sign name. A deaf person can only give you your sign name, and it's only after time when you're hanging out with a group. I volunteered in an after-school program in San Francisco. It was an immersion program with children, and it took me about 4 months of working with them before they even gave me a sign name to show that, like, you know, I was kind of part of the gang and everything. So they gave me a sign name for a V, hand twisting down. Well, it was 10 years ago, so I had way more hair. I had a pompadour, and my hair used to flip down. So my sign name is a V twisting down. My partner in the program, her name was Carrie. So she had a K sign and she had a bunch of earrings on her ear, and it went up. You're stuck with your sign name until you go into a different group of people and whatnot, and they might want to change your sign name, and a deaf individual has to do it. It's almost like a rite of passage that you're, you know, respected amongst the deaf community when you get a sign name. Deaf people don't feel like they have a disability. They consider themselves a linguistic minority. So it's just, you don't speak my language. If you spoke my language, we could communicate just fine on there. And if everybody knew sign language, there would be no communication barriers on there. So deaf people don't take it as a disability. They take it as, this is our culture and this is who we are. And even amongst the deaf community, a lot of people even rate your signing if it's more English, because American Sign Language is derived from French Sign Language combined with local American Home Sign Language, where they combined everything to create American Sign Language. A lot of information. Sorry, that was my major. All right. Low vision. So the visual description is a picture of 3 penguins on the right top. Then as it goes, the center of the picture is blacked out on the 3 penguins, and then it gets bigger on the right, and then it kind of starts covering the whole thing, and then it's one big black thing. On the bottom, it looks like the picture of it's a fuzzy picture, probably of a train terminal or airport terminal. So we have low vision. It's a visual impairment, is the loss of sight that cannot be corrected with contacts or glasses from low vision due to the fact there's still some sight and potentially to be improved with visual aids. Low vision includes blind spots, poor night vision, and problems with glare to almost a complete loss of sight. Anyone is susceptible to low vision because it results from a variety of conditions and disorders that affect the eye, though more common as you age in life. Legally blind. Well, visual description is a pair of legs and a white cane on a sidewalk. Well, legally blind is when your best seeing eye has a sharpness sight of no better than 2200. Some people who are legally blind use different tools like echolocation, white canes, or have a seeing eye dog to help them navigate. While seeing eye dogs are working, usually wearing a vest or harness, they should not be distracted at all. You know, what may happen if a service dog is distracted, they kind of get detrained on there. So you always want to leave the dog, let them work. When that jacket's on, it means I am working at this time for the dogs. So if you distract them, then they end up kind of losing that training. So you always want to ask the person, can I pet your dog or whatnot? And always talk to the person. Don't talk to their pet. That's one thing we see a lot with people with blindness that have, or even people, anybody with a service dog. You know, talk to the person, not the pet on there, and make sure to ask the person if you could pet their dog or whatnot. Usually when I see a service dog, I go, you're working, I'm backing off on you. Blind is not totally blind also on there. There's different types of blindness of spots, tunnel vision, depth perception. So usually people assume blindness, they can't see anything. No, they can see some things, but not everything on there.
Okay, so people using mobility devices, you do not want to touch their equipment or tools, whether it's a cane or a wheelchair. Individuals consider it an extension of their body and is part of their personal space, that being the wheelchair or cane or any other mobility device. Never talk down to individuals in wheelchairs. You want to get down to the individual's level. So you're looking them eye to eye, and then you engage in conversation. Do not use, touch, or lean on their chair unless okayed with the individual. And they will not wait for you if you walk too slow. So they go at their own speed.
Power chairs.
Just like anybody else in power chairs. Benefits of disabilities. There are many benefits individuals with disabilities can offer to the community. And this can be knowledge of tools to help with productivity. They have a different point of view on issues and solutions. And they can also build perspective many people do not see without life experience of individuals with a disability. We also saw this a lot in the emergence of COVID, when we entered into the COVID world, that there was an article on how people with disabilities adapted, because some people with disabilities faced isolation. So they almost adapted, according to the article, better than people without disabilities. So you can take that for what it is, according to the article, but that's just an example of how this has been highlighted in society. Next slide. In conclusion, these are just a few examples of how to respectfully address individuals with disabilities. Individuals with disabilities are people first and appreciated, being recognized as such. We are not defined by our disability, rather it's only part of who we are. This is why it is so important to use person first language, or if people prefer identity first language, make sure you know what kind of language they prefer. Only a handful of examples are shared here. And like I said, it's polite to ask somebody how they would like to be referred to.
Great. And does anybody have any questions, comments, whatnot? Because we have reached the end of our presentation. Oh, Kathy has raised her hand.
Hi, I have a question for Benjamin. You mentioned that during the COVID shutdown that some people with disabilities actually fared better. And I was sitting here assuming that because so many people, depending on the disability, might be relying on a lot of assistive care, people coming into the home, and that suddenly their caregivers were no longer able to do that, that a lot of people were actually faring worse. So I'm really interested to know more about what your experience was, or what the research has shown, or what stories you've heard, or your own personal experience with actually faring better. Thank you.
Right. So thank you for the question, Kathy. Some clarification does need to be made. Of course, it was very subjective, because people face different situations, obviously. It was just really, this one article pointed out how people with disabilities kind of had to think more outside the box, right? Because they always have to learn how to adapt to different situations throughout their life, because they're in a situation where they view things differently and adapt to society differently. So in this one case, it was kind of leaning on that as a strength, right? That Vincent and I spoke to in other slides, leaning on it as a strength and really knowing how to adapt. But yes, people with personal caregiving, they did really feel a very big impact, because it did change the way their care was given. We advocated a lot for people with disabilities and their caregivers to have priority in getting vaccinated for that very reason. But thank you for the question and time to clarify.
I could see one benefit on there too, Ben. A lot of people that were isolated at home, they're able to join in on meetings and see things that they wouldn't have seen before by Zoom, by
Absolutely
being able, even though it kind of forced you to go into the virtual world, it made it a lot easier. I mean, even on your side, you used to, spend half your time getting to and from meetings, and then now you just
Yeah, so one thing we've really honed in on from an advocacy perspective is try to amend the Brown Act. The Brown Act is an act that says that governmental meetings must take place in person. And there's stipulations on how you can join remotely, such as you have to post in a public place and welcome people into your home to participate. We find that very daunting, obviously, for people with disabilities. So that is one advocacy initiative that has been, or we're hoping to address through COVID and the aftermath of COVID.
And Noreen posted, thank you so much. My cousin's above knee amputee moving to independent living for the first time. He has lived in 2 decades in congregant living. So knowing about your services was immensely helpful. Oh, thank you. Yeah, we've been around a long time, but thank you so much, Alice, for getting us out here and doing this. This is great.
Yeah, I was so thrilled to be able to work with you again. And we are turning this into a series. So at the moment we have one more workshop planned, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to plan at least a couple more with you, because these partnerships are great for boosting the amazing services that are available in the county that people just don't necessarily know about. So I put a link into the chat for our next event. I'll also be sending out a follow-up email to everyone with any links that I've shared, and the slide deck from tonight. And that event will be about the history of disability advocacy, focusing on some Bay Area history, because there's a lot that's sort of started in the Bay Area and happened in the Bay Area.
Because it's the best area.
Yeah. Your comments about COVID also segue well into something I wanted to share about the library, which is that all our library staff are trained in helping people register for vaccines and find test appointments, and also programs like rental assistance that are ongoing from the county and state. So if anyone knows anyone who needs help with that kind of thing, or if you yourself need help, please do get in touch with the library, because we really want to support our community in staying as strong and healthy as we can. And we have a webpage, which I will put in the chat, that highlights a lot of the resources available through the county, and also some of the library's resources that we've put together to support people during COVID. I also put into the chat, I'll do it again. We love getting feedback about our programs, because that really helps us know whether we're providing programs that are serving you, because that's what we're here for. And so if you could fill out this short survey, it's really just a couple of questions to help us know what it is that you want from us as the library. Let me find that link again.
And also, I was mentioning to Alice, they have a great Libby app that I have my library card tied into. So even though I can't physically go to the library and hold a physical book in my hand, I can go on my phone and get almost any book I'm looking for.
And you can physically go now if you want to, but our online resources are great for if you're not comfortable going out yet. We also offer curbside pickups. You can pull up to the library and give us a call or text us, and we'll bring your books out to you if you're either not able or not comfortable or don't have time to get out of your car.
Increasing accessibility, I like it.
That's the goal. And of course, we welcome feedback on if there are things at the library that are not accessible to you or people you know, because that's always our goal, to be there for our community. So with that, if anyone has any other questions, sorry, I got on my closing remarks before we necessarily wrapped up.
Oh, CID also has a reuse program. So if you know anybody that's looking for durable medical equipment, right now we're not taking donations, but we are working on, once we get more back up to speed and get stuff cleaned out, we're going to be basically any disability, any form of DME that you're kind of looking for, from wheelchairs, walkers, rollators, power chairs, dressing sticks, pretty much any type of durable medical equipment you might be looking for. We have a reuse program, and we go through and give it back out to the community, or get things pretty much pennies on the dollar. So if you know anybody that needs any durable medical equipment in the area, feel free to reach out. That's one of our CID programs. which is the one that I work with, which is our reuse program. And we help a lot of individuals pretty much from San Francisco all the way to San Jose.
We can hang out for a few more minutes. And if anyone has any other questions or comments, you're welcome to share. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening.